From the very first episode of season 3, I noticed that there's something off about him. Things are a little bit too quiet. He's never this quiet. Hey guys, this is Honey Samurai, and today I'm going to be doing a deep dive here into the social and developmental relevance of Attack on Titan today. Seeing as we were a generation that grew up with Attack on Titan, we grew up with the characters of Attack on Titan, I felt like it would be really cool to draw some parallels between how the characters have changed and their perspective of the world has changed, along with how we ourselves have changed and our perspective of the world has changed as well. This is gonna be a long one, so buckle up guys, I'm getting straight to it. Also, I do want to mention that there are some spoilers in this. This is going to be going over the development of characters and the overall show from the first season all the way through the first part of the 4th season. So yeah. Also, just to quickly mention, I make animated show reviews, share fashion ideas, and pretty much find any excuse to geek about Japanese lifestyle and culture. So if this sounds like something that you might be interested in, click that subscribe button. Please. I started watching Attack on Titan quite a few years back in high school, and then I stopped around that long hiatus between seasons, and just kind of recently got back into Attack on Titan since the release of the final season. Ever since then, and even more so now, I noticed that Eren has such a severe case of main character syndrome, which, even though he is actually the main character, pretty much, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Because allow me to explain. At worst, the way that I could put it is that Eren is just a bit dramatic. Especially in seasons 1 and 2. He's just so dramatic, such a drama queen. Everything has to be taken to 100. And you know, I understand he went through a lot of traumatic experiences, etc. But I still feel like he was pretty freaking dramatic in the way that he handled things. I mean, he has those very stereotypical traits of like the anime protagonist who's just super hell-bent on making the impossible possible just because, you know, his emotions went into it. I was kind of already used to the anime formula, much like Hunter x Hunter, where the character is just like, the character always wins. Why? Because, you know, their desires are very noble and very pure, and because of that, at the end of the day, they're going to win. Except in Eren's case, it was just a little bit more extreme, like a concentrated version of that kind of character trope. I dismissed it as anime being anime, but as time went on and I continued to watch the later seasons, I started to realize, no, I think this was intentional. And that's what's so freaking cool about Attack on Titan and why I decided to make this video today. At the end of season 2, we start to see this dark cloud sort of looming over Eren after he retrieves his father's memories. He discovers a lot of things about his father that aren't all too perfect and show that even his own father, you know, got his hands dirty. His own father isn't pure like he thought he was. This is a very pivotal moment in not just the series but the show, because it's a moment that jumps him forward like a couple of years psychologically. This is like the first step towards where he basically starts to become a totally different person. And I really like that they show one specific moment that sort of jolts him into that direction, this kind of darker, more mature, for lack of a better word, direction. Because a lot of times with growing up and with aging, yes, some of it is gradual, but a lot of times it's also very sudden, traumatic moments like this one that just kind of propel you a few years ahead into your overall development. You know, a lot of times it's traumatic experiences or just experiences that are extremely hard to handle that push us in that direction. And that's what happens with Eren. It isn't something that gradually happens throughout each season. it's kind of just like abrupt, and it starts with this very moment and then kind of piles onto itself further and further as each season develops. And then we get to season 3, where we find Emo Eren. Has that already been coined, Emo Eren? I feel like it would be, because he's really freaking emo here. If it's not coined, I'm coining it right now. From the very first episode of season 3, I noticed that there's something off about him. Things are a little bit too quiet. He's never this quiet. Usually he's all over the place, bitching and salivating about how he's going to kill all of the Titans just because he's so special and so strong, but we don't get any of that in this season. And, you know, as much as I found those previous characteristics to be pretty annoying, I found myself kind of missing them and sympathizing with him and relating to him a lot. Yes, he was pretty annoying, but he was just a kid. And I like that. I like that kind of self-awareness that Attack on Titan shows. A lot of times we get the typical anime trope where, you know, you have a literal kid doing all these violent things and who truly believes that, you know, with their sheer will alone, they will change the world, and it does work. But I'm so used to that trope that I've kind of become desensitized to it, and kind of just, you know, it's not the most realistic thing in the world, let me say it that way. And you can't really blame the characters for thinking a certain way because, you know, they are kids after all. But what I like about Attack on Titan is that eventually that kid does grow up, and we grow up with that kid. So, you know, while we really enjoyed Attack on Titan and the characters as they were while we were kids with them, now today, you know, we're growing up and we're seeing them kind of respond to the world differently, the same way that we are also changing and responding to the world a little bit differently. Eren realizing that the hands of his own father aren't pure is a lot like us coming to terms with the fact that our own parents aren't perfect either. Usually it's not to the point where they're going around killing people, killing children, but you get what I mean. And to go back a little bit, Eren realizes that, you know, the world is pretty shit from like a pretty young age, like elementary young age. And a lot of us also kind of hit that realization around that age if we go through traumatic experiences or happen to be parts of groups that are targeted by violence and other inequalities in the world. For some of us, it happens earlier. For some of us, it happens later. But for Eren, it happens really freaking early because he basically grew up within such confinement and watched his own mother get eaten by a Titan and so many terrible, terrible experiences that no children should ever have to go through. But he goes through that at a very early age, which triggers him to kind of develop this savior complex. When I was a kid, I fantasized about saving the world through all kinds of means, including humanitarian work at home and overseas, such as my ancestral home country of Haiti, not knowing the implications of any of it, of course. It wasn't until high school that I realized that much of these fantasies was rooted in my desire to feel special or superior to the rest, and the fact that a lot of these humanitarian trips are rooted in this facade of white salvation that I myself was buying into due to my own guilt of having born into the US, while much of my own family lives in a country that doesn't have the same access to resources that I do. This is not to say, you know, that you shouldn't donate, you shouldn't do humanitarian work, that you shouldn't, you know, care about, you know, major worldly causes. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that I had a very black and white, limited perspective of the way things really were. What I failed to realize back then was that, you know, even the solutions that I had idolized had their own problems as well. I didn't necessarily know better than everyone else or have this special third eye compared to everyone else. Sure, maybe I was a bit more empathetic than some, but that didn't make me any more special or see the light better than anyone else. As a matter of fact, I myself still had a lot to learn from. In high school, I went so far as to declare that I wanted to be part of the police force, determined to basically sacrifice myself for the sake of the safety of my community. And only after I decided to pursue something else, a different passion, did I realize that even the police force that I wanted to, be a part of and do good things with had its own problems as well, and has a really dark history and takes part in so many things that I thought that I would have been rectifying had I been a part of that. Growing up, you kind of you don't know a lot of things yet. You kind of see things in a black and white sort of way. There's the good and then there's the bad, but then as you grow older, you start to realize that a lot of the good is mixed with the bad. And a lot of the bad is mixed with the good, because there's nothing that in this world that just exists as if it's in a vacuum. Everything in this world is influenced by other things just because we're all a part of the same thing, if that makes sense. These are little things, not so little, but they seem like little things that you learn only over time and through experience and through observation. Which you just do not have the time yet to see yet. You're not around long enough to see that. Wow, I sound so old. I'm only 24. Why do I sound so old? I'm just tired. The world makes you tired. In discovering the complexities of all these worldly problems, like how a product that markets itself as vegan can actually still be detrimental to the environment and be using child labor, can often lead people towards the path of indifference, because you just kind of start to realize that there isn't always a straight black or white answer to solving any of these issues. Some people kind of assume this role of powerlessness, especially if they're not themselves directly affected by it. For instance, I don't want to go too deep into a tangent here, but even in the way that they structured the walls was just genius. They not only showed class, but also how each class responded to crisis in relation to how close they were to the outer edges of the walls. So the further more you go into the center of those three walls, the more indifference and apathy that you start to see within the classes, and also more wealth, which is just genius, because it's exactly how it is in this world. It's exactly how it is in this world. The less directly impacted you are due to your status in life, due to even where you're located, oftentimes influences how you're going to respond to crises. It explains the varying degrees of how we respond to climate change, and how we respond to racism, and how we respond to economic inequality. All of these things go into it. And Attack on Titan does such a great job of physically giving you a metaphor for how each group of people can respond depending on where they are in life. And the more that I discover these different complexities of these different issues, the harder it is for me to just be blindingly angry at people that choose the path of indifference. Hear me out. That doesn't necessarily mean that I promote or excuse indifference towards very real worldly problems. I just find myself empathizing just a little bit more than I used to, just because I understand where it comes from. Do I have a specific solution for, how to even handle that? Not really. But it's very fascinating how Attack on Titan, an anime, was able to visualize that for us so beautifully well. Anyways, yeah, as I was saying, I don't act like an Eren as much as I used to. Basically, it's kind of scary, because, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? Does it mean that I'm resigning to the problem or becoming part of it? Or does it mean that I'm becoming a little bit wiser with how I spend my energy? Am I just trying to look at things from every angle of the problem? I don't know. I don't really know. I don't even know if what I just said made sense. But essentially, I'm starting to realize, just like Aaron, I'm not that special. I'm not any more special than someone else who is also special for having been born. So in that way, I sympathize with Aaron. I really did, as he grew more and more quiet and self-doubtful after he learned about what happened with his dad. Just having been born into it and having had his dad kind of pass down whatever sins that he had or whatever ideas that he had. Just being born in it, he was already entangled in the complexities of the issue. And by season 4, Aaron's idea of what he should do in order to save the world, of course, becomes pretty cemented. And I think a lot of it has to do with his stage in life. I think that as you grow older, it becomes harder and harder to change your mind about a lot of things. And I think that his own views kind of become cemented. And then there's also the fact that he takes in a lot of memories of other people, so he's not even himself anymore. I think that when you take in the memories of others, you take in part of their identity as well. So there's the whole factor that he's not even fully just Aaron anymore. But at the end of the day, I think it also has to do with his stage in life as well. And it brings us to the obvious question: is he any better? Or has he become a monster? Had we not seen his upbringing by detail and watched his mother get ripped to shreds by a titan along with him, would we see him differently? Probably. And this brings me to not only a national but global level at which I see parallels between Attack on Titan and the world that we're living in. On the one hand, we see people that are totally comfortable living within the walls, bearing children, only worrying about their next meal, and just generally accepting the peace that they have, no matter how artificial or finite it may be. On the other, there are the people that sacrifice themselves on the front lines for the sake of broadening the freedom of humanity. At one point, a character argues that it takes a special kind of person to feel a calling in order to take up that role in the first place, but it doesn't necessarily make them any more special or less ordinary than those who did not choose to fight. And I really like the fact that they show Aaron realizing that he was, not very special at all. He was not more superior or more special than other people or had a third eye that other people didn't have. And I really like that they show that, because by showing that, they're showing us that you do not have to be an extraordinary person in order to do extraordinary things. Write that down. Even as Aaron is realizing that he's not special at all, at the point at which he realizes that, he's already accomplished so much. And then he's going to accomplish even more beyond that. Anybody outside will look at him and think that is an extraordinary person. But no, he's not extraordinary. He's just done extraordinary things because of this calling that he felt. Because he remained focused and he did his thing to the best of his ability. His thing was, becoming a titan and just kind of like fucking shit up. All right. Armin's thing is books and just like thinking up these schemes in order to, manipulate the enemy. Everybody has their own special abilities that they can focus on instead of just getting all wrapped up in, who's superior to who, because at the end of the day, it's not about that. It never was about that. But it's still human nature, isn't it, to want to feel like we're special in some way. Such is life. I'm comparing the two categories, those within the walls and those outside of the walls, begs the obvious question. Who is more free? The people living inside the walls or those fighting in order to break them down? Considering the fact that so many outside of the walls die fighting and live in this continuous cycle of violence, when you consider that fact, you might want to argue that maybe the people within the walls are a bit more freer than those outside. Maybe they're freer because they are not caught up in that violent cycle. They can just create their own space within those walls. And that illusion, that constructed illusion that they've built up for themselves, allows them to have that space of freedom, if that makes sense. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I can make an entire video just analyzing the way that they explore this concept of freedom throughout this show, but that will make this video way too long, so I'm just gonna leave it at this. But moving on. It really touched me how they show how each generation continues the fight of the previous. They show it happening at such a speed, the way that, you know, each generation comes in and continues the fight of the last. Each generation is hell-bent on making sure that the way that the last went out didn't go out in vain, and making sure that they themselves did something of value. I can see how we feel that way in our own lives as well. And I love how they show how the previous generations, they try to push their own ideals and kind of pass on whatever it is that they learned, or whatever it is that, you know, that they believe. However right or wrong it is, they try to continue that onto the next generation. And then on top of that, you also see those next generations pushing on ahead so fast that those previous generations become so quickly outdated, to the point that it's hard to look at. It's really hard to look at. And the most obvious scene that we have to show that, it's when the recruits, they basically all band together and beat up the training commander because his ideas were too outdated. Of course, they were, you know, they were forced to do it, of course, due to the insurrection within the military, but it still gave us the same overall idea, which is how quickly, within the blink of an eye, that ideas, even people, become outdated, and we push on so quickly that it's even violent towards the people that we're leaving behind, the ideas that we're leaving behind. And you know, these are generations that put us in the position where we are now, to have the privilege to even have our new ideas in the first place. Yeah, we push on so quickly to the point it's just like we're throwing them away. And at the same time, you cannot completely condemn us for it. You cannot completely condemn the newer generations for it, because in a way, the world has such a cycle that is far bigger than any individual, and it's just, once the wheels are turning, there's no way that you can turn it back. There's no way that you can slow it down. You either go with it in order to survive, or you don't. I hope that makes sense, because that honestly almost made me tear up a little bit, because you really do see it. You see it on a micro level with how, for instance, Western generations handle their aging generations, and then you see it on a macro level with, I mean, even with cancel culture, right? We go so far as to cancel people of previous generations, even if, because their ideas have become outdated. It's like, yes, they were problematic, but it was also of that time. How far are we supposed to beat them down for it? That is also a big debate right now. But all in all, it's just, Attack on Titan, it really went in a direction that I had never expected. I feel like I just babbled in this video. I feel like I just babbled absolute nonsense, because I just wanted to quickly get my ideas out there on what the heck I just watched over the space of like 2 days with the most recent season. But yeah. But to conclude, I am honestly so shook at how beautifully complex this anime got, just like out of nowhere, with the way that they took the perspective of a small town, energetic but stubborn boy, all the way to blowing open these walls to the global perspective, and showing the progression of that boy into manhood, and how his further discovering more about the world plays into his own character development as well. This show is just so metaphorically elegant, and I feel like this anime is just perfect for where our generation is right now, especially with all of this social turbulence, just like going through this global traumatic experience along with domestic problems as well in our own home countries. I just think that this anime was really freaking cool to grow up with. And I think it's a special thing to have that kind of thing align like that. In a way, I don't really mind so much that they took so long between, you know, seasons 1 and 2. I don't mind as much anymore. I really did before, but, you know, if it got to this, if this is where it came to, you did good, AOT. You did good. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm honestly not completely sure if I should continue making content like this. I've been kind of uncertain lately. So if this is something that you really like, please let me know in the comments below. If not, tell me I should stop, do something else. I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say because, I don't know. I want to give what the people want. Anyways, love you guys, and till next time.